Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Excellency Azalia Soumani, President of the Union of the Comoros and current Chairman of the African Union, Excellencies, Head of State, Government and Delegation, Excellency Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Union Commission, representatives of international organizations, financial institutions, civil society, youth, women, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. First and foremost, I would like to thank President William Ruto, the government and the people of Kenya for the exceptional hospitality accorded to us since our arrival in this hospitable and green capital, Nairobi. The beautiful and natural environment in this country augurs well for the great success of our climate summit. The organization of this climate summit in such friendly conditions in just 6 months, thanks to the decision of the African Union Summit last February, is striking proof of the excellence of your leadership, dear friend William. I sincerely congratulate you. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le récent rapport du groupe international d'experts sur les changements climatiques
on climate change, IPCC, confirms our fears. Africa is warming faster than the rest of the world. If this phenomenon is not stopped, climate change will continue to have a serious climate change more than any other region. Hence, it will have an unbearable pressure on the food systems in Africa. African countries thus face disproportionate burdens and risks arising from unpredictable weather patterns, particularly prolonged droughts and devastating floods at all levels. Massive humanitarian crises provoke detrimental impacts on economies, health, education, peace and security, and other related risks. For example, the season 2022-2023, about 18 million people have been affected by drought in the Horn of Africa alone. Recently, tropical cyclone Fred has affected more than 1.2 million of people and caused the death of more than 700 people. It is also estimated that between 2019 and 2023, the economic loss as a result of disasters in Africa is between 20 and 35.5 billion American dollars. This gloomy list is not exhaustive. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, climate change has spared no sector. It is to be recalled that Africa has around 400 million who do not have access to clean drinking water, and about 700 million do not have access to a very good sanitation. And this also indicates, experts indicate that there is a gap, a financing gap of 11 to 20 billion dollars. So we are obviously on the verge of seeing climate degradation. It is not the only factor, and it will be wrong not to integrate this in our global analysis of the negative factors including governance, which is at the very center. I do not want to yield to pessimism. And in the general, it is, however, fortunate that in the table we have some beacons and favorable indicators. I cannot help reminding that 600 million people do not have access to electricity, and 200 million of them do not have access to clean cooking and are exposed to all respiratory problems and diseases due to smoke. And because of climate change, we have problems in our infrastructure, and we need to develop profitable infrastructure and spend at least $160 billion per year. Indeed, it is encouraging to note that the African governments have devoted about 3.5% of their GDP to the development of infrastructure over the past 20 years. It is too little compared to some emerging countries. China and India, for example, devote 7.7 and 5.2% of their GDP, respectively, in infrastructure. We can thus see in which direction efforts have to be made. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this summit affords us an excellent opportunity to translate the climate ambitions of Africa into investment opportunities, to consolidate our voices on matters on burning issues of climate change, to prepare for the UN Climate Summit and for COP28 in the United Arab Emirates. At these meetings of global importance, Africa must, among other challenges, highlight the worrying and sometimes tragic situation in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, where drought and floods alternate, in the Congo River Basin, with dangerous deforestation and the disastrous consequences of cyclones in southern Africa and in the island states. It is urgent that Africa come to all these meetings with concrete proposals to be implemented without delay. I strongly reiterate my call to come to the next two meetings with precise proposals without drowning them in literature and the usual litany on the imperative need for collective justice for Africa, where responsibility is very limited in the pollution of the world, with an inversely proportional share of the volume of global investment in the field of environment. This call for a restoration of justice for Africa would benefit from being supported by a real reform of the global financial architecture, for which a high-level panel is rightly devoted at this summit. Obviously, this reform must resolutely focus on the financial organs and structures, institutions which structure the universe, which operate far from Africa. In this desired reform, a question comes to mind: the weight of the debt and the financing gap of the SDGs. Africa alone represented a need of $1.3 billion per year for sustainable development needs by 2030, while the financing needs for SDGs in the same period were $2.5 billion for financing developing countries. Everyone knows that the public debt stock in sub-Saharan Africa at the end of 2023 was estimated at $1.1 trillion out of 650 billion SDRs mobilized. Africa received only 33 billion, which is only 4.5%. In view of these staggering figures and many others, it is clear that there is no relevant global intervention in favor of Africa without a credible solution for the crippling debt challenge of Africa. To wage a struggle which include financing adaptation, $100 billion per year, Africa has galvanized its will in its common position through a momentum unifying African voices, and it will be central point of our agenda in G20 as soon as we join.